Profile share via email report story. Afternoon sun put the crew in misery as they waited for the women on the ship to come out of their quarters. The sun, placed smacked in the middle of the sky, had no remorse, radiating more heat than usual on the Straw Hat Pirates. They felt as if they were being fried alive and couldn't handle any more of lying around on the ship's deck. Some were about to storm in there and pull them out of their room, but knew that wasn't wise to do after all. Only 6 minutes had passed when they first waited patiently. I can't take this. Luffy, you're the captain. Tell them we hit the island already. Usopp cried, shaking the rubber man's shoulders back and forth. Though the long-nosed pirate should have known better than to ask him to do such a thing. Luffy easily complied. Okay. Zoro, Frankie, and Chopper pulled their captain away from where he was heading, not allowing him to see Nami. Nope, not happening. The sharpshooter nodded, then bowed his head, remembering that he's most likely the person that set off Nami's vexation. You're right, sorry. Bad idea, definitely not Luffy. Then I'll go see my lovely ladies, Sanji merrily told, already racing to the women's quarters. The crew didn't stop him, thinking he's the best candidate to check on the navigator and archaeologist while being okay with receiving what the cook calls a punch of love from Nami. As he was about to knock, the door creaked open, revealing Robin holding a few papers in hand. The curly-browed blonde put a hand out in front of him for the older woman to take. Robin Kwan, we have been waiting for you, he politely said. The female fruit user kindly smiled and let him place a peck on the back of her hand. Although Sanji was baffled by her permission, he didn't hesitate but lay the softest kiss on her also soft hands. I hope you weren't waiting too long, Cook-san. We weren't, and it was true. It just felt like an hour. Robin made her way to the center of the deck and the men took that as cue of her wanting to make an announcement. I'm quite surprised all of you decided to take an afternoon nap at the same time. I almost had a hard time managing the ship. Aren't you curious as to how we're, now, on bay? Now that I think about it, you're right, Usopp replied. When Nami reports of the ship almost nearing the island, she'd start throwing commands to the men to steer the Thousand Sunny straight there. But today, the men were able to rest easy. But why didn't you just wake us up instead of doing it on your own? Robin smiled. I wanted to give it a try. My Hana powers were quite useful in such a situation. She lied. Robin rather prefer watching them work with the ship than for her to do so who wouldn't. As he listened the older woman's delicate voice, Sanji couldn't get the thought of his lips meeting contact with his sweet Robin Kwan's hand out of his head. Such a moment was unforgettable to a person like himself. And as he began to fantasize about the other things the archaeologist might also let him do in the future, he became greedier for more of that allowance and wondered if Nami Swan would let him do the same. He was ashamed he forgot about the beautiful navigator for a few minutes and didn't realize her absence on the ship. It was now his mission to get her out of the women's quarters, but that only made him question why she hadn't exited with Robin earlier. I apologize, Robin Kwan, but it doesn't feel right to not have both ladies on deck. I'll go get her. Before he could turn around, she heard her tell him not to go. There's no need, she already left an hour ago, the older woman said. Brooke and Frankie shared perplexed looks. The skeleton spoke. Is that so? Nonetheless, Nami-san always gives us instructions before exploring a new island. Promoted stories. You'll also like. My Captain Soft Side, Luffy x Nami. 6K79. As Nami is working in her room, she decides to take a small break, so she walks out and looks at the sea. After a few minutes she looks at the place Luffy is usually sitting. Sea Stone, Luffy x Reader. 83K 2.5K. Just a Luffy x Fem. Reader, Takes place at Impel Down and will be using stuff from the actual show, so if you're not past episode 400 you might not want to read. I won't D. 3D2YA One Piece fanfic. 372K 6.2K. Luffy stumbles upon Nami by chance on a small island after the crew was separated at Sabayati Archipelago. The two decide to train together, but then comes the warm, weird, My Selfish Captain, Luffy x Nami. 151K 2.4K. The long-awaited 2-year reunion leaves Nami with unknown feelings, and could this be the case for Luffy as well? One Piece does not belong to me. It belongs to Oda-sen. Ultimate Devil Fruit, One Piece fanfic. 197K 6.1K. Clarity lived a fairly normal life, at least she did until she was thrown into the world of devil fruits and pirates. Stuck in the grasps of her own hell for over 10 years. My One Piece Book 1, 11.7K 278. Monkey D. Luffy, a cheerful, carefree young man from East Blue wearing a straw hat, set sail on a small boat carrying the biggest dream of finding the One Piece. He's R. Water Pillar, One Piece X Reader. 4.1K 143. As the Strafuts sail across the sea in hopes of reaching Alabasta to stop a civil war, they come across an island. An island not found in any maps. In this island stand. Robin nodded. Her curiosity got the best of her this time and gave me the job so she can get an early start on what the island is like. She lied again. Nami wasn't so impatient to leave her crew for an island. Let me just give instructions now so you all can go. She fished out envelopes from her bag and gave each to the paper's owner. The curly-brow blonde's covering clearly looked the most thickest, and sealed tightly inside was bills upon bills stacked beside each other. The men groaned at his envelope but knew it was reasonable because that money was used to feed their mouths. Navigator San gave all of you the same amount of money except for Cook San, and it seems she was very generous with how much she gave. When hearing such, the crew eagerly opened their envelope, wondering what little amount of cash Nami had given them. Was it the usual $30? Or maybe $40 if she was in a good mood? But in this case, she was feeling the opposite of amazing, so does that mean $15? Nami really is the devil when it comes to her treasurer role. But as they counted up their money, it wasn't $40, $30, or $15 even. In their hands was $150, which they gaped at in a starstruck manner. Such an amount was unbelievably huge to the Straw Hats, and never has Nami given so much. Frankie, being the shipwright, needed to buy tools and items for the ship and would sometimes get a little over $50. He got used to bargaining for cheaper prices with sellers. But now it wasn't needed cause he had this much to spend. And Usopp, being the one to make his own weapons, needed the right materials to build something that can more or less match his crewmates' powers, something as strong. With this money, he really can buy something powerful. The older woman watched her nakama joyfully talk about what they'll be spending their money on. She knew that even though Nami was very greedy when it comes to cash, she'd surely smile lightly when seeing the crew's gleeful looks at her random act of kindness. Robin did originally thought the navigator was making a joke when telling her to give each crew member $150. But she had very much meant it, to the archaeologist's surprise. But her hidden generosity didn't match with her upset mood in the morning, which kept the female devil fruit user wondering why she was acting so thoughtful after being clearly angry. The thought was put aside though because she could come back to it after sending her crewmates off. I'm glad you're all pleased. It'd be great if you all thanked Nami once you see her. Of course, Usopp, for a moment, forgot of the navigator's wrath. Before you go, Navigator San wants you to be divided into 3 groups. Cook San shall be with Kenshi San. Oh, what? Slipped out of Sanji's lips. Chopper and Frankie will stay with each other while Captain Sand stays with Usopp and Brooke Sand. Any questions? She did plan on asking any objections, but knew the only one who wanted to object would be the crew's rivalry duo. Frankie raised his hand and worriedly stared at his lover. Does that mean you'll be watching the ship? She nodded in response. Zoro loathed the idea of spending his day beside the perverted cook and would take any chance to stay away from him. I'd rather stay on watch. Robin glanced at the swordsman. Oh, well, unfortunately, I feel the same. She beamed a smile that told him to not ask any further, and he didn't dare try but sigh in loss. The papers that she held were then brought back to her attention as she softly waved them all goodbye. They all awkwardly left, finding it already weird enough to hear orders from her and not hear a single shout or yell. But, of course, Robin was not Nami and wasn't the type to raise her voice as equal as the cat burglars. Chopper looked back at the archaeologist, sitting on one of the beach chairs with an umbrella as her shade while reading peacefully. He frowned, not understanding why the women seemed so strange today. Frankie, he looked up at the shipwright, who looked back down at him and asked, yes. What do you think is wrong with Nami? No matter what the island is like, she never leaves without us. They both jumped down from the railing and landed on the beach. The cyborg nodded, thinking the same. Yup, you're right, but you know what? I have a feeling it has to do with Mugiwara. Ah, that could be it. The reindeer said as his hooves walked upon the island's sand, leaving his footprints trailing behind him. I wonder how Nami will react when she realizes Luffy thinks of them that way. He blurted out. Usopp told you about it, right? Frankie chuckled. Yeah, he did. And I think about that, too. I'd usually just think she'll get mad and shout at him, but now, I don't think I can make out her reaction anymore. It's complicated. They were now off the sand and walked on the dirt road, keeping their pace. The doctor agreed. Before they knew it, the sand shifted to a dirt road and was suddenly filled with playing children, either throwing dirt on each other or playing with a ball. The calls of parents saying, "Stop it. Your clothes are already messy," or "Play after we're finished shopping," was heard behind the pirates, and they had passed by to retrieve their kids and drag them further into the road. From where they now stood, a marketplace was seen selling all sorts of goods ranging from fruit to meat to toys to swords to gadgets to objects of all kinds. Although it was only vendors selling their items, the atmosphere made it seem like it was a huge celebration. And in the distance, they could see Luffy kicking a ball around with a few kids while Usopp, almost acting like the parents, pulled him away. As they both gawked at the scenery of confetti, balloons, and sounds of loud but soothing music, Chopper couldn't help but murmur under his breath. Well, I know Nami will be really happy to hear that. It was a bit impressive that from such a far distance, the noise reached where they were at and gave them a hard time to hear each other. Frankie didn't get what his small animal friend had said. What was that? Chopper dismissed his words with a giggle. I didn't say anything, baka. Blank, underscore, blank. Nami roamed around the streets of Ichiba, the island known for its famous, large marketplace, with the goal of heading as far away as she can from where her friends would soon be. She scanned the many booths, its items, and the island's people, and everyone had been very friendly with the island, also truly living up to its title. Many children had tried to silently follow her with the intent of wanting to observe the Straw Hat's cat burglar. It was a shock that these kids remotely knew her, and it showed how much pirates did not scare them. Even their parents recognized her and hugged her with a warm welcome, not realizing the consequences of being so affectionate with a pirate. But it was convenient when strangers hugged her because it was easier to pickpocket them that way. But after already knowing how kind these people were, she couldn't bring herself to steal from anyone on this island. After waving goodbye to the little ones, she laid her eyes on a bakery. A very busy one. She turned back to glance at the street that wasn't as lively as the street that the market was located. Even if the bakery wasn't near the famous part of the island, it didn't stop their business from earning many of customers. Taking a look inside wouldn't hurt. When entering, she was hit with the smell of strawberry danishes mixed with the melonpan's own freshness. The pastry's scent excited her and Nami couldn't wait to take a look at the many options the bakery flaunted. Unfortunately, the bakery's inside display of their goods was blocked by a long line. Some people still made their way to the end of the line while knowing how lengthy it is. It seemed it was worth the wait to get the goods they want. Although her stomach grumbled when seeing a passerby exit out, eating a croissant, she couldn't stand the patience of waiting for her turn to order. She frowned disappointingly at herself but then shrugged, knowing the island had other places to eat with less of a waiting time. Her heel spun to leave the bake shop but was stopped by a hand on her shoulder that pulled her away from the door. She hoped it was one of her nakama because if it isn't, they will pay with a punch to the gut for grabbing her so aggressively. Excuse me, sir, but what the hell? But punching them was almost forgotten when she locked her eyes with a man who turned out to be good looking. But even creeps could be attractive, so she still kept her right hand balled into a fist. Even though ready to throw a hit, she didn't attempt it when now taking a better look at that guy. She didn't even continue what she had to say, but maybe because she wanted to hear him speak for his action before saying any more. I'm sorry, I just had to make sure you didn't leave. Ignoring the goofy, nervous smile he wore, his features showed he was older than Nami with the growing hair on his chin and tall physique. She didn't know how to exactly explain it, but he just gave that older vibe. With Robin, one would think she was just in her 20s who was just very knowledgeable, but that mature personality is because she is, in fact, older than what one may think. On top of his head sat curly, short, brown hair similar to Ace's and glasses perched on his seemingly perfect nose. His voice was a bit more deeper than Zoro's and as he spoke to her, held bags of all kinds of bread. Nami might be giving him too much credit, but all was true. Of course, everyone had their flaws and this bread man had his. Matching his goofy grin was his strange clothes. He wasn't the most fashionable man in town, but he definitely wasn't the worst. The black sweatpants and gray shirt was normal, but the designs is what threw her off. What's up with a single slice of toast placed weirdly at the bottom of the shirt? And what's with the squares and faces of a bunny that ran down each pant leg in a line? His fashion taste was peculiar. I know pretty much every single islander on here and I know you're a visitor. The navigator was too annoyed at how her mind told her he's too handsome to punch and forgot her manners. So what? Well, I've been looking for someone to taste test my bread lately, and even better, someone who wasn't familiar with Panda's bakery. You, a visitor, wish you can try their stuff but can't because you're unwilling to wait. The conversation was as weird as his pants. Yes, just spit out what you want from me. Her rudeness didn't faze him. It made him happy knowing she's hearing him. Before that, I'm just glad you're staying at Ichiba for a while. You leave in 3 days, right? At least that's what your log pose reads. He pointed at her wrist for confirmation if he was correct and she nodded. Then how about I make you a deal that'll benefit the both of us? You're hungry and I need a taste tester. I feed you some of the bread I baked while you criticize it. What do you say? She was taken back at how he definitely had his eye on her the moment she walked in to be able to read the navigation device around her wrist. But when hearing his offer, she was a bit hesitant. Going into a stranger's house wasn't the smartest idea, but she wasn't a defenseless woman and can beat this guy up if he ever touched her in that way. She was a pirate for a little longer than a year. Of course she learned how to protect herself from hungry men. And even though the idea was weary to her, his bright smile drew her to accept his proposal. His beaming look made her want to say yes to something maybe dangerous, because it reminded her of Luffy commanding their crew to enter an island that obviously was unsafe. It always ended with the crew having no other say but to listen to their captain's order. She hadn't realized that after a minute, she slowly nodded her head to him and was not inside of the bakery anymore but was being dragged by his muscular arm. Why she hasn't hit this man for acting so familiar with her, she didn't know. But his presence, his arm was too similar to Luffy's, and she wanted to keep staying like that. After all, she was still low-spirited at her captain's words to her in the morning, so she didn't have the energy to yell. Can you blame the girl? The rubber man did not want their friendship anymore. At least that's what Nami thinks he's hinting when he asked, "What if I told you I don't want to be friends?" Naturally, even a girl like herself would feel extremely down when words were directed towards her. News spreads around quick and I heard the Straw Hat Pirates have landed on shore. You must be Nami, right? The navigator clearly, seeing how you're wearing a log pose. Hearing this bread maniac actually know who she is made her nervous, and she took her wrist away from, forcing his grip on her to loosen. The possibilities of him wanting to catch her for her bounty isn't impossible. Plus, the major friendliness towards pirates did seem strange. Her legs decided on whether to run or stay still. It decided on the latter. I know this island is friendly with pirates, but you're not going to do something to me, are you? 'Cause if you are, I suggest you don't try, because I will. Thunderbolt me. Ah yes, that staff of yours is impressive. Nami frowned at his knowledge on her but then smiled when he mentioned of her weapon. She couldn't help but brag. It is. One of my crew mates built it for me. He's really the greatest. I'm sure he is. The bread guy chuckled, then gave her his hand so that he can continue dragging her. I know I don't seem like very much of a trustworthy guy, but I have no interest in doing that sort of thing with you. Nami's eyes grew deadly at the insult. Not that I think you're not pretty. I just know that's wrong to do. At that point, Nami was okay with letting this guy pull her away. Usually, her instincts always knew whether one is lying or not, and this man, fortunately, wasn't. I know I said I need good judgment from you, but I also desperately want you to come over for another reason. The tangerine lover didn't worry anymore. What's the other reason? My nephew adores you. Blank, underscore, blank. Brook watched from behind to observe the same scene of Luffy spending his money on every food vendor he sees. Though he didn't mind much since it was the captain's choice on what to spend his allowance on, investing money on food isn't a bad thing at all, so he didn't try stopping the rubber man from ordering the entire menu. Usopp, on the other hand, thought the opposite and knew it was the last straw when Luffy told a worker to serve another set of their whole menu. He left the musician's side to tell the cook to forget his words and grabbed Luffy's vest to lug him back on the dirt road. He frowned at his goofy captain. Geez Luffy, what's the limit to how much you can eat? Mugiwara frowned back. Usopp, I still have so much money left. He wagged his finger and continued their walk straight ahead. Seriously, is there anything else you think about other than food? As Luffy and Brook returned to their crew member's side, the captain stayed silent for a good few seconds before picking his nose and creating a humming noise to show he was thinking. His two crewmates had their eyes set on him as he thought hard. But it didn't take so long to reply to his friend's question, because after he finished his glaring contest with the ground, he looked up at them with his signature smile. His mouth opened to say what else he thought about, but Usopp changed his mind and didn't want to hear his answer. The long-nosed pirate covered his mouth with his left hand and sighed with faint, pink cheeks. No, no, never mind. He used the same hand to push his captain away. It's fine, don't answer that. The skeleton stared at the younger pirate with puzzlement. What's wrong, Usopp-kun? I'd really like to know what's also on his mind all the time, don't you? Brook, no. He's just going to reply by saying, Nami. Luffy finished Usopp's sentence for him. Hearing such made Brook chuckle and Usopp groan. She. Brook whispered a, young love, and the sharpshooter replied with, maybe, still not understanding his captain's feelings that well. Yeah, right, Usopp said sarcastically. There's no way food is equally as important as Nami when it comes to your thinking. You love food, and as soon as Usopp spoke his last sentence, he immediately regretted it. Oh yeah, Luffy never stopped grinning. Well, I also love Na. Unfortunately, the rubber man wasn't able to fully say his navigator's name due to the hand that returned back to cover his mouth. Usopp slapped his hand back to his captain's mouth before he completed that sentence. You, shut up, Luffy. Same with Luffy's grinning, his groaning also didn't stop. Your words are so predictable, it's cheesy. Usopp's cheeks stayed pink. You're making me embarrassed just hearing you. The musician smiled and pulled Usopp's cheeks. Oh Usopp-kun, leave him alone. Let the man be in love. Luffy laughed and patted his slouching back while agreeing with the ninth member of the Straw Hat crew. Yeah, with the conversation about Nami being brought up, it reminded him of the small box deep in the pocket of his shorts. As he slung his arm around his friend of the same age, his other arm searched for the box under several stored food. When feeling something bulky, he knew he found it. He pulled it out of his pocket and opened the egg-colored box to show off to his two crewmates. Just take a look at this and that'll show you, she. Inside of it was a silver chain bracelet with charms kept around it. A cloud, an orange, and a pinwheel were the three charms that repeated in a pattern. Such charms to be made asked by the captain himself. His face sparkled with joy at the item he bought. Haha, isn't it super shiny? Usopp stared owl-eyed at the jewelry before him, trying to remember when the hell Luffy even had the opportunity to buy that without Brook and him being there. As far as he knows, they never took their eyes off of him. His captain is full of mysteries sometimes. Baka, the sharpshooter punched the top of the rubber man's head. Who cares if it's shiny? What's more amazing is the fact you actually did think about her. His mouth gaped at the gorgeous bracelet his captain picked out. Are you even Luffy? Brook reached his hand out to feel it. Luffy-kun, this is really incredible. His friend's surprised reactions kept his laughter going. But when seeing his musician almost lay a finger on it, he instantly closed the box. Haha, you can't touch it, he said in a childish way while shoving it in the pocket with no food to not let it get any more dirty. You think she'll like it? Usopp chuckled, seeing how exhilarated his best friend was. The cheesiness earlier was too much, but now, his attitude was just sweet. Well, if it was super duper expensive, then she'll love it. Luffy frowned. But it wasn't that expensive. And his eagerness in giving it to his navigator died down to disappointment. Usopp nervously sweat and Brook patted the long-nosed pirate's shoulder to reassure he'd fix his mistake. No, no, if it comes from you, Nami-san will be delighted. Since the box was now put away, all three of them returned to walking again. Luffy smiled at the skeleton and threw his arms behind his head. Good, and the rubber man began to run when spotting several children playing with a jump rope. Usopp used that chance to talk about Luffy with the dead but alive man, Phew, I'm really glad Luffy is being Luffy again. Seeing him so serious and upset lately is scary, you know. But that description couldn't match with the Mugiwara in front of them, whose stretched out arm was being used as a jump rope. All the kids jumped over the rubber arm, and a little girl stood on the other side to hold his hand, the other end of the rope. Instead of looking severe or mad, he was an approachable, silly guy. I agree, but he only acts like that because of you and Frankie not believing his feelings are genuine. Brooke pointed out, in which Usopp nodded his head to the truth. Okay, maybe I do think he likes Nami now, but Nami's into Zoro, so there's no point. Brooke let out a sigh and motioned them to sit on some seats outside a ramen shop. As soon as their bottoms met the chairs, the skeleton spoke. I really thought Usopp-kun wouldn't be dense about these things. What makes you think she likes Zoro? The coward's eyebrows furrowed. He knows she does because he saw the proof in front of his very own eyes. Yesterday, during dinner, she got all red when facing Zoro. What other reason would she get all doki doki for if she didn't have some feelings for him? See, that's where I prove you wrong. Brooke told but didn't explain just yet when the shop owner came outside asking for their order. Usopp shook his head, saying they just wanted to borrow their seats and, luckily, the owner was kind and let them do so. I thought it was obvious that she only did that to misdirect her feelings. Misdirect. Usopp thought about that word, defining what that meant in his head, and when he finally understood what that violinist was saying, he began screaming, "Oh! Oh! Oh my god!" So she knew that if I did catch a glimpse of her looking at someone while she kept denying, I'd know it'd be him she likes. Damn it. And she purposely glanced at the wrong person. Wow, Nami got me there. Brooke listened to his realization while making sure Luffy didn't go anywhere else and get lost. Him and Usopp were his babysitters for today. Yes, that's exactly it. But still, it doesn't exactly prove it's Luffy she likes. It wasn't jump roping their captain and the kids were doing now. One of the children's mother came out with snacks and Luffy was able to eat with them. But his stomach was like a pit and ate everything before the little ones could get what they wanted. Some got angry while some were fascinated. The mother was okay with putting up a challenge and hurried in her home to gather or make more food. She reminded Brooke of Sanji. He returned his attention back at his friend. That's what Robin-san and I are trying to do, make Nami-san admit she likes Luffy-san. Robin-san insists she does have feelings for our captain and she's usually never wrong, so I decided to help as well. Geez, I feel like an idiot. I gotta tell all that to Frankie, we were both wrong. Guys, Luffy sped to their table and pointed at the large store farther to the other side. This nice lady gave me this yakisoba pan and it was so good. She told me it was from that bakery. Come on, we have to go over there. Brooke and Usopp laughed at his enthusiasm, got up from their seats while following their captain's command by replying, "Hi." Blank, underscore, blank. You musclehead, where the hell did your dumbass go? Luffy really wasn't hard to deal with. The real challenge was putting up with a directionless swordsman who, once again, got lost. Sanji was absolutely fed up. Either the idiot was trying to get away from him or actually got lost. Even Luffy is better to be with than you. Blank, underscore, blank. I don't know Japanese and wanted to name the island after a word of the language. So I tried looking up market in Japanese and found ichiba most of the time. If that is incorrect, please let me know so I can fix it. Woo. Hi One Piece fans. I know it's a bit boring to read a chapter with no Luffixnamey moments, but it has to be done. Smiley face. I really wonder what name I should give the bread guy. I might even make him nameless. He'll only be mentioned when they're at the island and they'll be out of there soon. If you have name suggestions, go ahead and share it. I might even use it, maybe. Comments really keep me going, so feel free to do so. Thank you for using your time to read this chapter. See you next time, where stories live. Discover now.